Hey sketchy friends, in today's video I want to introduce you to a few different urban sketching styles. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and the name of each style is certainly not an official label. It's just what I've sort of decided that describes the style the best way that I can. I do encourage you to check out books such as The Art of Urban Sketching and The World of Urban Sketching for further inspiration on many different styles from all over the world. So my intention here is to show you that there's no right or wrong when it comes to urban sketching, and that by seeing so many different styles, it may encourage you to get out there and just sketch in your own unique manner. So this video took quite a long time, much longer than I expected to put together. So if you do enjoy it, please do consider giving it a thumbs up or even sharing it with some of your artsy buddies as well. It's just a tiny snapshot of what's out there in terms of urban sketching styles, but I really encourage you to go forth and explore this subject matter further. Okay, so let's get started with an easy-ish one, and by that I mean easy to describe rather than easy to pull off, as this is probably, in my opinion, actually one of the hardest styles to pull off, but that is the realistic style. So the first person that always springs to mind for me personally is Stephanie Bauer, and she is, if you don't know, a sketcher based in Seattle. She's an architectural illustrator, and she is a prolific urban sketcher. She delivers workshops all over the world, and her specialism is portraying accurate perspective, I would say. So as you can see from these example sketches, I love the device of looking through the arches. So you can see that she's kind of used a blue for the shadow of the arches that are in front, that are in shade. And then you look through and you can see the warmth of the yellow buildings that are in the sunlight beyond, which is a really beautiful technique. And again, here you can see she's a real fan of using sort of yellowy golden colours for anything that's sort of in light, and then the blues as the shadows. And I didn't actually do this deliberately. I'm just realising this now that I've picked sketches of hers that seem to just be through arches. Clearly that's something that's just really gets me. And I love this kind of shaft of light that's coming through on the left-hand side as well as perspective. I just think her way of displaying light and shadow is really beautiful. Okay, so moving on to the next sketcher I'd like to mention is Paul Heaston. Paul is based in Denver, Colorado, and he's known for his realistic ink drawings, and he's also a master of hatching. And he also often works on tone paper as well as white paper. I'd say he's really well known for actually more of his fisheye drawings, his distorted kind of drawings. In this first one, you can kind of get that vibe, but not quite so much. But I've mentioned him here in the realistic category just because he also can just convey scenes in a super realistic way. If you check out this sketch of the car here, you can see that hatching work in action. And yeah, it's just absolutely realistic proportions. It's absolutely amazing. And this really quite complex street scene here that he's detailed out as well. So I always think he must just have so much patience, because I do think a lot of his drawings do take, you know, 3 to 4 hours or so. So, but yeah, and he's got a really wonderful, realistic style. Okay, and then finally in this category, we've got Ian Sidway. He produces a lot of instructional books. I've actually got one on my shelf here on watercolour. He is based in London. Some of you also might know him from the watercolour rules course that Sketchbook School did. If you saw that, he featured quite prominently in that course. And he's just got such a wonderfully crisp style. Again, he has got this awesome hatching style, which is really quite different to the traditional hatching style that I have seen a lot of, which I think is quite interesting. You can see that in his drawing of the skyline in London here, the big walkie-talkie building there. It's just an interesting style. And I see this a lot when he does like realistic tree drawings as well in ink. Is that kind of hatching. I do mention that in one of my videos over on Pretty Sketchy TV. But you can see here, very crisp, even his watercolor style, very, very crisp. These beautiful shadows on the ground, absolutely amazing. He's got a really wonderful way of capturing trees. And again, in this one, yeah, it's just the word that keeps coming back to mind with him is crisp. And I also love he uses a lot of white space as well in his sketches or his watercolor work. So you can see the sky is just absolutely blank, and you see that such a sharp edge on the kind of horizon there, or the edge of the bridge or whatever that is. It's just absolutely incredible, really precise and really crisp. Okay, so the next category of styles I'd like to speak about is one that I've called cartoony, and I think you'll see what I mean when I mention that. But I'd also just quickly like to draw your attention to the fact that I do have a membership. It's called Pretty Sketchy TV. I've got a monthly option, a 6-monthly option, or an annual subscription option, so do go and check it out. I think I've got about 100 videos there, but I'm always adding to them, and they're step-by-step tutorials on all kinds of subject matters to do with urban and travel sketching. So if that's something that you would like more of, step-by-step tutorials, all different styles, but always to do with travel and urban sketching, then please do hop over to prettysketchy.tv to check that out. And if you've got any questions, just let me know. Okay, so Stephen B. Reddy, I absolutely love his style. He is based in Seattle in the USA. He does a lot of very detailed drawings, as you can see from this one of the guitar tool shop or workshop. I think this was actually done as a commission. So many details, but his work has just got such a flubby kind of quality. I'm pretty sure that's not a word, but do you guys remember that film, Flubber? I used to love that when I was a kid. Yeah, anyway, so he's got a really nice flubby quality that I just really enjoy looking at. But again, you can see in this picture, I think of, yeah, some kind of secondhand store or something. So many details. It really conveys the fact that it's a secondhand store with all these kind of weird and wonderful items in it. And then this third one in a cafe restaurant, maybe like a Mexican restaurant. I love these decorative tiles that he's captured. He just really, really captures the scene, but it's, as you can see, it's not in like a super realistic way, but more of a cartoony way, and it just always makes me smile. He does have books, like graphic memoirs and things like that, available over on Etsy. I really, really want to get my hands on these books, but I do think he only ships within the USA. Either that or worldwide shipping is really, really expensive. Either way, I might have to talk to some American friends to to get them for me so I can actually get my hands on them finally. I've been wanting them for years. Okay, cool. Moving on to Tommy Kane. I think a lot of you will know of Tommy already as well. He's a mate of Danny Gregory's. He was a bigwig in the advertising world, based in New York. He's a loud and proud vegan as well, which is the subject matter heavily reflected in his sketches. And again, I just love his bubbly, flubbery, yep, I'm rolling with that word, flubbery quality to his work. I think I read once that he was heavily influenced by the art style in Mad magazine, and I've never really seen that magazine, but I have heard of it, and certainly in reference to caricature art. So I did Google it, and I can see that this probably is a big influence to him. Again, interesting hatching style as well, and I love that he draws with ballpoint pen, or he'll go full watercolor. You know, whatever is to hand or whatever's convenient seems to be the way for him. So he sketches all kinds of things, a lot from his imagination. Sometimes he'll put imaginative elements into his urban sketches as well, but he does do straight up urban sketches as well of things that are actually there. I just really love his kind of wonky, cartoony style, really, and a lot of his drawings also have a lot of sense of humour to them as well. So I really like this Ruthie's Kitchen one here. And I really like how he's captured the dog sitting in like different positions. I think that's really fun and kind of shows you a passing of time as well, which I think is cool. Yeah, so just a really big fan of his work. And he's got some beautiful books available on Amazon. I've only got one of them. I think it's called All My Drawings Are Made with Pen. And I think his other one is called An Excuse to Draw or something. So I don't have that one, but they're big books, big sort of A4 size, hardback, really beautiful full colour copies of his sketches. Yeah, really high quality. So I really recommend getting your hands on that book if you like what you see in terms of his style. The next and last sketcher that I'd like to mention in this category is Oliver Horrell. I do have an interview with Oliver on my channel, so do go and check that out. It was a really fun interview and he gave some really amazing tips on sketching, and he's got a great book out as well. I think you can only buy it from him. So do check his website out, but it's a really cool book that does genuinely talk about things that I haven't really seen in other books as well. So I think that's really cool. And again, if you're a fan of his style, then you'll love his book. It is an instructional book. I really enjoy his style. It's a cartoony style, but it's a bit different from the previous two. It's not as flubbery. It's a bit looser, and I think that's why I love it so much. I really love the way Oliver uses colour. I think it's really interesting and quite unique. His drawings always seem to have an overriding atmosphere of colour that ties them together. And I think his loose mark making gives it quite a lot of energy. And I also love that many of his drawings have quite a comedic element to them, either the way he's drawn the people or via the things that they're saying in the speech bubbles. So for example, in this sketch, I really love this figure over on the right and how he's captured the way that guy is walking is just really funny. Oliver also holds workshops all over the world, and he will be teaching at the upcoming Urban Sketches Symposium this year in 2024 in Buenos Aires. So I think there's actually still tickets for the symposium. So, you know, if you're in a position to, go and grab one and then make sure you come and say hello to me. So on to the next category then, which I've called White Space / Minimalist. I did originally have these two as separate categories, but I decided to combine them because I kind of think they're somewhat along the same line. I do have a video talking about minimalist urban sketches specifically, so if you would like to see that, you can check it out in the corner and watch it after this video, of course. So the first artist I'd like to mention that really captured my imagination in terms of use of white space, especially when it comes to on-location drawing, is John Harrison. And I also have an interview with him on my channel from quite a few years ago now, but I don't really do many interviews. I think I've actually got two, one with John Harrison and one with Oliver Horrell. But that just shows, you know, I'm like just such a big fan of theirs that I just really wanted just to speak to them just for my own satisfaction, really. So this is John Harrison, and you can see how he just leaves beautiful white space and he only paints certain elements of the scene. He is based in the UK, sort of in the northern part, in Yorkshire, I think. I say that tentatively because I don't want to offend anyone, but I think he's in the Yorkshire area. And yeah, he's just got a beautiful palette, uses a lot of my sort of favourite colours, like an indigo, you can see, and like yellow, ochre, quinacridone gold kind of vibe, and then these kind of olive greens and the kind of sort of burnt orange. I just think that's a lovely colour palette, and it really works well for the more rural scenes that he sketches, which I think is also interesting to point out that he definitely is more on the rural side of things. And I know quite a few people have said to me before, oh, I can't do urban sketching because I don't live in a city, but there's nothing in the Urban Sketches Manifesto that mentions only being able to sketch in the city. You can absolutely sketch on location wherever you are. It doesn't matter whether you're at the beach or if you're in a field or if you're in the mountains or if you're in the South African bush or wherever, you know, you can sketch wherever. The next person is Liz Watkins, and I've mentioned her many times before, big fan. She's an illustrator, urban sketcher and educator living in London, and her use of white space is absolutely masterful. She just knows exactly how much to draw and what to leave out. It's just so powerful and so much fun to look at. And I also love how she effortlessly interweaves the use of shapes and lines. So some areas of her sketches are just painted shapes with not much details, and other areas might just be lines with no colour, and the way that she interweaves the two is just really interesting. I think she often holds sketch walks in London as well as conducts workshops all over the place as well, so do check out her Instagram or website. This is one of my very favourite sketches of hers, mainly because I spent a lot of years in this area in Camden at the Lock, played a lot of shows there with my band, so I think on both levels I really love it. I love how she's captured the water. I love how the path is pretty much completely blank apart from a couple of choice kind of paving stone textures. The bridge over the water. It's just everything about this sketch I really love. And again, you can see here with this one, a lot of painted shapes and not too much line work. And this one, yeah, some painted shapes and some empty shapes, but drawn in line. And the juxtaposition between the two and how she works both into her sketches is just, yeah, really cool. So the next person I'd like to mention is also based in the UK. I swear this was unintentional. This is Simone Reid. She is based in Manchester. She's a lecturer in architecture. Her style is incredibly unique, as you can see. She often draws busy scenes with fine yet loose lines. The term organised chaos seems to spring to mind when I look at her sketches. And then just with a burst of very minimal colour somewhere, but otherwise the page mainly remains white. And I think it's just really, really powerful. I just love her, loose yet structural lines that she uses. Some of her sketches are just super sparse in terms of the colour, or she just uses one or maybe two, like in this one where she's used a bright red, but otherwise kind of grey. I think that's really, really interesting. And then finally in this category, I just want to mention Togo Cruz. I did mention him in my Minimalist Urban Sketches video. I think his work is absolutely wonderful. I really love it. I love how in some of his sketches he just draws the absolute minimum, yet it really just still conveys the entire scene. It just blows my mind, to be honest with you. So I think he mainly works in an A6 sketchbook, which is very small, by the way, and that's mostly what I've seen kind of on Instagram. And his drawings really are quite loose. They have such an energy to them, and I just really love his work. I'd love to have a book of his sketches that I could just look through them all day long. So Togo, I think, is based in Portugal. But yeah, lots of white space, lots of loose lines, lots of heavy black and white space, which then obviously amps up the contrast as well. So do go and check his work out on Instagram to see much more. Moving on to loose then. I also have another video from quite a long time ago now about some of my favourite loose urban sketches, which you can check out. The first person I'd like to mention is someone who's a bit newer to me. I don't know much at all about Yoi Kato, aside from the fact that I seem to have bumped into many of his sketches on Pinterest, and I just really love the way he captures chaotic city scenes. Other than that, I know he lives in Japan, and on researching further, I realised his work's actually included in the World of Urban Sketching, which was one of the books I mentioned earlier by Stephanie Bauer. And there's also an article about him in the Urban Sketchers official magazine, which is called Drawing Attention. If you haven't checked it out, it's a free digital magazine. I think it's released every 2 months, but do go and check it out if you haven't seen that. I'll put a link in the description below. It's very fun to read through. I encourage you to go and read that article by Jane Wingfield, but I'll give you a couple of interesting points here. So Yoi actually revisited drawing at the age of 50. He loved drawing as a child and then kind of stopped as a promise to his mother. If you go and read the article, you'll find out why. He predominantly uses ballpoint pen with oil-based ink, which I think is quite interesting. And he really loves to travel alone, so he can spend entire days sketching, but also have an opportunity to interact with the people he meets along the way. Actually kind of sounds like heaven, doesn't it? He also seems very smiley. So there you go. Those are all my facts. You can find Yoi on Instagram, and I'll put the link to his work below. Okay, so the next sketcher is Neil Whitehead. Very, very loose style. He's also based in the UK. I think he's based in Taunton in Somerset. And he's got a super recognisable style. He tends to do continuous line drawings, I'd say, of street scenes, then with a kind of loose watercolour accents on top, usually with a few colours kind of applied wet and wet. So it's leaning towards Simone Reid's style, but it's quite a bit looser and more, I think from what I can tell and what I've seen of him, he definitely utilises a continuous line, and that's when you're drawing and you don't take your pen off the page, so it leads to quite a loose look. So I think it's really, really interesting, and he definitely uses a bit more colour and a bit more wildly as well. But yeah, as you can see, it's a really interesting style and really dramatic to look at as well. I really like how he uses colour to really draw your eye into the scene. And then I want to mention Tom Pagelhauser. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he goes by Captain Tom. I think for the very reason that his last name's quite difficult to pronounce. I think I heard him say that in an interview once. He's an absolutely incredible artist, and I really would say one of my very, very favourite artists. I believe his day job is in animation, and he also co-owns a skate shop as well, which I thought was quite interesting. And I can certainly see the influence of animation, especially when he sketches people. They just seem to be imbued with so much character. And I really love Tom's loose drawings with moody watercolour washes applied, in the way he picks out certain areas as well with whitewash, throws in some ink splatters as well, which I'm a big fan of. The other thing that particularly stands out about Tom's style for me is the way he creates a shape on the page with his sketch. Often he will sketch across a double page of an A4 landscape orientation sketchbook, and I really love how his sketches just trail off into nothingness. And another thing that he does that I'm a big fan of is that he sometimes takes instamatic photos, so photos that get printed from the camera automatic or like straight away instantly, and he adds those to his sketchbook spreads, and I think that's a really lovely addition to accent the sketch that he's made. Okay, my next category is just called Unusual Perspective, and I've got two artists in particular that I want to mention in this category. So the first one is Alien Bin Bin. He is featured in The World of Urban Sketching by Stephanie Bauer. He's just got an absolutely amazing style. I love how he bends scenes into whatever orientation of sketchbook he's sketching in, as you can see here. I've been a fan of his for many, many years now, and he's just a master of distorting or exaggerating perspective, and also injecting his scenes with kind of like a manga or an anime kind of vibe as well. It's definitely like got that kind of style to it. And when I found out that Alien Bin Bin is a big fan of Kim Young-ji, that made total sense to me as well. The way he just interprets reality before him and molds it into this bendy, detailed illustrations, it's just breathtaking. He also has a great sense of humour to his sketches, which I always really enjoy from the sketches that I follow. And from what I can tell, he tends to use coloured ink pens, and I also think paint markers as well to make his drawings. So always interesting to look at sketches that don't use the usual ink and watercolour materials. So as you can see, some of his sketches are just extremely colourful and playful, and they've also got a cartoony element to them as well. But I really wanted to point out how he draws the perspective that he does is just absolutely incredible to me. I just don't know how he does it, and it's just mind-blowing. And then the second sketcher in this category that I wanted to mention is Rayam Ali, and she's a sketcher based in Alexandria in Egypt. She runs a lot of workshops, and she's taught at past symposiums, I believe. She is teaching at the symposium in Buenos Aires in October 2024, and she's got a wonderful collection of sketches where she sketches looking upwards towards kind of old windows, doors, balconies, that kind of thing. And it's just so interesting because you don't often see too many people drawing from this angle. So that's the first thing that really struck me with Rayam's work, is the perspective that she often draws from. And I think actually the subject of her workshop might be something about looking up as well. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting and just something different. Okay, so moving on to one category or a style that I've simply called playful. Not really sure how else to categorize this. It probably blends into cartoony as well, maybe sometimes a bit surrealist, but I've simply called it playful. The first sketcher I'd like to mention is Nelson Paciencia. I'm not really sure how to pronounce his surname. Sorry, that's a bit of a theme, isn't it? But Nelson is based in Portugal, and he's sort of been on the urban sketching scene for quite a long time, I think. I think he helped arrange the symposium in Porto, which was several years ago now. I actually just didn't really know of him until I looked at the workshop listings for this year's symposium, and he was on there. I looked up his work and I was immediately hooked, and I was like, I need to learn from this guy. I want to learn everything from this guy, because I just think his drawings are so fun to look at. I really love the way he draws people in particular, and I do think his workshop is based on sketching people. He tends to draw them with gigantic hands, which I think is hilarious. I love the use of his speech bubbles as well. That seems to be a thing I just really love about a lot of sketches. In this drawing, I didn't even need to read the caption or anything. I knew straight away that that was Inma Sano, who's another one of my heroes. So yeah, I just think it's really fun to look at, and I can't wait to learn his way of sketching people from him. I just think it would be really great. The next sketcher I'd like to mention is Marina Gretchen. She's also been on the old urban sketching circuit for quite some time. I think she's taught a lot at the symposium. She teaches a lot of workshops. I think her sort of preferred subject matter is people sketching as well. She just completely disregards realism, in my opinion. I think she just sketches really playfully, organically, really childlike, but like in a good way, you know, not in a rude way or anything. Just like with wild abandon, you know. It's just like colours and senses, and you just get this full kind of atmospheric feeling from her sketches. And I think she's also quite often sort of does reportage sketches as well, sketches protests and events and things like that. So I think that's really interesting. It's always really fun to see. She is teaching at the Buenos Aires Symposium. I think her workshop is focusing on sketching tango, which I think will be really, really fun. So definitely one to check out if you are going along. Finally, in this category, I would like to mention Inma Sano because, well, you know, she's my hero. I love her to bits and I love her style so much. Again, really, really playful, really fun to look at. I love her scenes of people in places. She doesn't concern herself too much with like really drawing everything really precisely and precise perspective, and it's not laboured in any way. Yeah, you can immediately feel like you're inside the scene, even though things aren't drawn like really realistically or anything. So I just think that's such a skill. I think it's really much harder than you would think it is to draw in this way and still convey like the scene and you feel like you're there, you know. So yeah, I love her people sketching most particularly. She is based in Seville in Spain, and I was lucky enough to meet her earlier in the year because I was in Seville and I went to an Urban Sketches meetup and she was there, which was really, really cool. So yes, I shall be taking her workshop in Buenos Aires. It was the very first one I selected straight away without even thinking. So I can't wait to meet her again and just learn from her. So the next category is digital. So obviously the very first person, and probably nearly the only person that I can think of or that I've found, is Rob Sketchman. He's an absolute boss on the iPad. He pretty much doesn't sketch traditionally at all anymore from what I hear. He just uses the iPad, which I think is amazing. Definitely minimalist and definitely probably saves a bit of cash over some time, not buying paints and stuff. But yeah, I just love his style so much. I think it's engaging. I think it's quite hard to quantify his style really, but I do feel like it has a graphic quality. I mean, a graphic novel sort of comic book edge to it, especially when he sketches people. I also really love his lettering, and he adds his little stamp as well, which makes it feel, yeah, it almost makes it feel like he is sketching in a sketchbook the way he adds his stamp in. I think it's really a really cool idea. And yeah, I was lucky enough to participate in Rob's workshop last year at the symposium in Auckland, and I can confirm he's a really wonderful, warm and friendly person and a fantastic teacher, and his workshop was lots of fun. He's also going to be teaching in 2024 in Buenos Aires, but he does teach all over the world, so if you do manage to catch him, then do check him out because he's a really great teacher. And then the only other sketcher that I could think of / come across who sketches digitally, and not all of the time, but some of the time, is Uma Kelkar. And she actually did write a book for the Urban Sketching Handbook series about sketching on a tablet. So when I thought about that, I was like, oh yeah, I even own that book as an ebook. Obviously, she would be someone to mention in this category because it's actually quite tricky to find people. So if you know of some digital urban sketches, do please mention them in the comments so I can go and check them out. But yeah, I love that Uma's style isn't exclusively digital, but she has a completely different style to Rob in terms of her digital sketching, which I think is a really nice contrast. She seems to dabble in a lot of different mediums and styles, something I'm actually a very big fan of. And I think it's great for sketchers to have their signature styles, but please don't worry about boxing yourself in. I encourage you to try everything You may actually settle into a little niche of sketching that you prefer, or you may continue just to roam around and try new things, and both are absolutely fine. But I really enjoy that Inma's style on the tablet is just a little more painterly, perhaps. And some of them, I feel like one or two of her sketches, it's actually quite tricky to even tell that it was done digitally. But yeah, I think it's a really nice kind of counterpoint to Rob's style, and I hope it inspires you to have a go if you do have a tablet. Okay, the next style is kind of gathered together in terms of an art supply, really, in regards to toned paper. But there are definitely some urban sketchers that almost exclusively use toned paper for all of their work. So the first person I'd like to mention is Murray Dewhurst. Murray's actually based in New Zealand. I did see him at the symposium, but I didn't really get a chance to go and introduce myself and meet him, which was a shame. But yeah, it was... he was kind of one of the organisers, and it was pretty hectic. So, you know, you just don't want to get in someone's way when they're kind of busy. But, you know, who knows? I might meet him again, or I might see him again in the future and go and say hello. But he pretty much exclusively uses toned paper from what I can see. I first discovered his work quite a few years ago, really, on Instagram. And I think it's less frequent that you see urban sketchers use toned paper, certainly a few years back. So that's why his work like really stood out to me. I'm always interested in how people are sketching outside of my kind of comfort zone, which is white paper, ink and watercolour. So I always find that quite interesting and inspiring. I just really love the way that he uses tone paper. I have almost finished my Stillman & Byrne Nova sketchbook, and I can confirm that it's been really, really hard work. But I am going to do a video about what I've learned about sketching on tone paper, so look out for that one coming up soon. But it is another one that's like kind of harder than it seems, really. And I just love how, for example, here he's capturing the street art and how much it pops off the grey paper. I think it's really interesting. I do think he's generally using Posca markers and other like normal markers as well, like grayscale markers, probably a variety of dry media, really, but I definitely think I've seen him using Posca paint markers or paint markers of any brand on his toned paper. And then the next urban sketcher that uses toned paper pretty much exclusively is Pat Southern Pierce. Her work is absolutely amazing. I love how colourful it is. She's yet another sketcher based in the UK. There seems to be a lot of sketchy people on such a small island. But yet again, her work is super distinguishable. She seems to mainly use grey or tan, but I have seen her sketch on other colourful paper as well, like yellow and bright red and purple and that kind of thing. She uses dry media such as ink pens, gel pens, paint markers and watercolour pencils, but without adding the water. And I think I heard her say in an interview once that she prefers using watercolour pencils to, let's say, colour pencils because they're a bit creamier. That's probably what you're seeing a lot of when it comes to her colours. And another key element that instantly makes Pat's work recognisable is actually her lettering style. It's the thing that got me to notice her style so much is her very distinctive lettering. It's absolutely beautiful, and her text is just as much of an important part of her overall sketch as the drawing, I think. So I think that's something that really makes Pat stand out over and above her sort of almost exclusive use of toned paper. Okay, well done guys if you've made it to the end of this video. This is the final style that I would like to mention, which is a reportage. Arguably, most of urban sketching is reportage, but I really wanted to focus on sketchers who really report on the news and events and that kind of thing quite specifically. So the first sketcher I'd like to mention is Dan Archer. He's another person that I hadn't really heard of until I looked at the workshop schedule for the 2024 symposium. He's super interesting. So he's another artist who's based in the UK. And he's actually a graphic journalist, so he covers a wide range of social justice topics, from homelessness to human trafficking, and he uses the drawn medium to protect his interviewees' identities and ensure that their stories reach a wider audience. So I thought that was really interesting. You know, that's kind of a key thing about how he captures a story, is that people feel a bit safer telling their story because they're being drawn rather than, let's say, photographed. His work's been published by Vice magazine, the BBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, American Public Media, Fusion, and the list goes on. So I'm extremely interested in reportage illustration and graphic journalism, which seems to be a whole other category by itself. And I'm actually on a bit of a journey to learn more about this specific area at the moment. So I'm trying to take in some of the key names in the field, such as Joe Sacco, Susie Cagle, Wendy McNaughton, Tom Hart, along with many, many more. And I actually think when I get a better grasp on the subject overall, I may make a video about it, because I'm just finding it so fascinating and such a rich subject. And arguably it's where at least part of the urban sketching movement kind of comes from, really, which is news reporting. So I'm going to be doing Dan's workshop. I'm super excited to meet him and learn from him, really. I think his workshop is focusing on drawing people while interviewing them. So I'm really trying to step outside of my comfort zone this year and do a lot of people sketching workshops, just to really try and get better in that area, because it's something I'm super interested in. So the next artist I would like to mention is Veronica Laura. Maybe a few of you have heard her name before. She's a bit of an OG in the whole urban sketching scene. She's based in New York and is a member of the faculty of the Pratt Institute and Parsons School of Design. And she also conducts private reportage workshops worldwide as well. Veronica really stands out to me as the epitome of a reportage artist. Her drawings are an immediate response to what's around her. There's no time to beautify and wonder which shade or colour or brush to use. She needs to draw like what's going on right then and there. And nothing was truer than during the 9/11 attacks, when, you know, she couldn't believe her eyes. She was there in New York. She was witnessing what was happening. But her way of trying to understand or deal with it was actually pulling out her sketchbook to record what was happening. So she's got some very moving sketches on that to check out, which you can have a look at on her website. Her work is featured in many publications, and she's also written several books on drawing and illustration too, including the Urban Sketchers Handbook on the subject of reportage and documentary illustration as well. She's even drawn the Pope John Paul II. She's even drawn him. Amazing. The next sketcher that I would like to mention is George Butler. George terms himself as a conflict artist. He's again from the UK. I'm sorry, I didn't really realise this list was so UK heavy, actually. He is one of very few that I personally know of, one of very few illustrators working out in the field to report from actual conflict zones, although this is not all that he does. He does report on other important social issues aside from war as well. George's sparse illustrations, I think, echo the difficult situations that he does actually illustrate on the spot. He uses plenty of white space, which I think adds a lot of drama and immediacy to his work as well. I think it also leaves space for a lot of interpretation from the viewer as well. George has a couple of books available of his sketches. His most recent release is one about Ukraine. He's also the co-founder of Action Syria, which is an organisation that makes sure Syrian people have the medical care and education that they need every day and when emergencies strike. So I find George absolutely fascinating. There's quite a long form interview with him on the Sneaky Artist podcast as well, if you guys want to go and check that out, with Nishant. I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but it's nice to see that there is need or a appreciation, let's say, of artists drawing out in the field on subject matters such as conflict and other social issues as well. And I think George is really kind of bringing that kind of activity to the fore with the work he does, along with the many other good things that he does as well. So to round this category out and to finish off this video, of course, we have to mention our founder, the man who put the label on things, Mr. Gabby Campanario, who did coin the term urban sketching and kind of started this urban sketchers movement, this ever-expanding global community that we're a part of. It's amazing how urban sketching has taken off over the last several years. And it's amazing how this movement around grabbing a sketchbook and a pen to draw the world around us has exploded such as it has. So it's an amazing legacy for Gabby to have created. Not that he's dead or anything, but you know what I mean. Gabby was, I don't think he is anymore, but I am open for correction on this. He was a journalist and illustrator for the Seattle Times, hence urban sketching's roots in visual journalism and reportage illustration. By the way, if you want a brief overview on what urban sketching is, then you can check out my video that I released very recently about that. I love Gabby's directness with his illustration. He doesn't mess about with pretty pictures and using watercolour just so and blah, blah, blah. He draws directly, he gets to the heart of the matter, and that's something that's really important if you are interested in reporting the news with your sketchbook. He's a massive inspiration to us all, that goes without saying, and I really hope one day that I can tell him what a huge impact he's had on my life personally by creating this movement called urban sketching. Thanks, Gabby. Okay, guys, that is it from me on this overview of urban sketching styles. Well done to making it to the end of this video. I hope you're super inspired. There must be so many more styles that I haven't covered, and obviously a huge amount of sketches that I haven't mentioned here, but these are just a few of my favourites and my favourite styles. I hope it's given you an appetite to go forth and explore urban sketching a bit more for yourself. Go check out the sketches I've mentioned below. I've put as many links as I can down there. Go check out their books, go and take some courses, but most of all, just get out there and sketch for yourself as well. Oh, and if you're in the market for a beginner's guide to urban sketching, then you can check out my book here as well, available in major bookstores and online. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.